Okay, so Jeff Passan dropped this idea a few weeks ago, and the internet absolutely lost its mind. He suggested that maybe, just maybe, the Toronto Blue Jays could sign both Kyle Tucker and Bichette to massive extensions, keep both guys, go all in, become the super team everyone thought they could be. And my immediate reaction when I saw that was, Jeff, what are you smoking? Because listen, I respect Passan as much as anyone. The guy breaks news. He knows the game. He's connected. But this idea that Toronto signs both Tucker and Bo, that's fantasy baseball. That's not how this organization operates. And honestly, I don't think it's even financially possible without completely destroying their ability to build a complete roster. Let's start with the basic math here because numbers don't lie. Kyle Tucker's going to command at least $400 million, probably more. We're talking about a 10 to 12-year deal for one of the 5 best players in baseball. He's 27, he's in his prime, he just put up elite numbers again, and he knows his worth. $400 million is the floor, not the ceiling. Then you've got Bichette, who's going to want somewhere between $300 and $350 million. He's a year younger than Tucker. He's been an all-star multiple times, and even with the down year, he's still a premium shortstop who can hit. So right there, if you sign both guys, you're looking at $700 million minimum in commitments, $700 million to 2 players. Now, the Blue Jays will tell you they have money. They'll point to the Rogers ownership. They'll talk about the Canadian market. They'll say they're committed to winning. And sure, they spent money on Anthony Santander. They brought in Tyler Rogers. They made some moves. But $700 million to 2 guys, that's not just unprecedented for Toronto. That's unprecedented for almost any team not named the Dodgers or Yankees. And even those teams don't typically hand out multiple $400 million contracts simultaneously. There's a reason for that. It's not just about having the money. It's about roster construction and flexibility. Here's what Passan is missing in his analysis, or maybe he knows it and just wanted to generate discussion. If you give Tucker and Bo those contracts, you're essentially locked into that core for the next decade with almost no flexibility. You've still got Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who's going to need an extension. You've got George Springer still on the books for big money. You've got all these other pieces that need to be paid. Where does the money come from to build a bullpen? Where does the money come from when you need starting pitching depth? Where does the money come from when injuries happen and you need to make a trade deadline acquisition? It doesn't exist. You've allocated everything to 2 players, and suddenly you're the Angels with Mike Trout. You got superstars, but you can't build around them. And let's be honest about who the Blue Jays are as an organization. This is not the Dodgers. The Dodgers can go out and sign Shohei Ohtani to $700 million, still have money for Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, and then go grab Tyler Glasnow and Yoshinobu Yamamoto for hundreds of millions more. That's a different stratosphere of spending. Toronto has never operated like that, and they've been willing to spend, sure, but they've always been calculated about it. They're not reckless. Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins run a tight ship. They value flexibility, and they're not going to mortgage the entire future on 2 players, no matter how good they are. Think about the practical implications here. Let's say Passan is right, and they somehow pull off signing both. Year 3 of these contracts, Tucker pulls a hamstring and misses 2 months. Bo's defense continues to decline, and suddenly you're looking at moving him to second base or DH, which creates a roster crunch. Meanwhile, your bullpen is held together with duct tape because you couldn't afford to sign quality relievers. Your starting rotation after Berrios is question marks because you had no money for free agents. Your bench is full of minimum salary guys who can't produce. You're the most expensive team in Blue Jays history, but you're not actually better because you couldn't afford the depth pieces that championship teams need. That's the reality Passan isn't addressing. Let me give you another angle on this. The competitive balance tax, the luxury tax, whatever you want to call it. Toronto has historically been reluctant to blow past those thresholds. And if you're committing $700 million to 2 players plus everything else on the roster, you're not just going over the tax line, you're obliterating it. You're in repeat offender territory, paying massive penalties, losing draft picks, dealing with all the restrictions that come with being a high-spending team. The Blue Jays have never shown any appetite for that kind of spending. Never. So why would they start now? But here's where Passan's take gets really interesting and where I think he might be doing some intentional pot stirring. Maybe he's putting this idea out there because he knows it's what the fan base wants to hear. Blue Jays fans are desperate right now. They just lost Game 7 of the World Series in devastating fashion. They're terrified of losing Bo. They're worried about whether Tucker will even stay long term. So when Passan floats this idea that maybe, just maybe, you could keep both, it gives people hope. It's good content. It generates clicks and debate. But is it realistic? Absolutely not. The other thing that bothers me about this whole conversation is that it ignores what we learned from other teams who've tried this. Look at the Phillies. They went out and signed Bryce Harper to $330 million, then Trea Turner to $300 million, then extended Aaron Nola. And yeah, they're competitive, but they're also constantly scrambling to fill holes. Their bullpen has been a disaster at times. They can't afford depth. You know, one injury derails everything. Is that what Blue Jays fans want? Because that's what you get when you allocate all your resources to a few players. Or look at the Mets under Steve Cohen. Guy has unlimited money, right? He spent like a drunken sailor, put together the highest payroll in baseball history, and they missed the playoffs. Money doesn't automatically equal success. You need balance. You need a complete roster. You need depth and quality throughout the lineup and pitching staff. Signing both Tucker and Bo sounds great on paper, but it makes actually building a championship team harder, not easier. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, but we were just in the World Series. We're so close. Why not go for it? And I get that sentiment. I really do. When you're that close, you want to push your chips to the center of the table. But that's emotional thinking, not logical thinking. The Blue Jays got to the World Series with this core, and they lost. Something needs to change. Maybe that change is upgrading from Bo to Tucker. Maybe it's getting younger and more athletic. Maybe it's addressing the bullpen issues that cost them in Game 7, but doubling down on the same core by paying them even more money. That's not a strategy. That's panic. Here's my actual prediction, and this is where I think Passan is just completely off base. The Blue Jays are going to extend Kyle Tucker probably for somewhere around $400 to $450 million over 10 years. They're going to let Bichette walk in free agency, and he's going to sign with Boston or Atlanta or somebody else. Toronto will then use the money they would have spent on Bo to address other needs. Maybe they trade for a shortstop. Maybe they sign a couple quality bullpen arms. Maybe they go after another starter. That's the smart play. That's the move that keeps them competitive while maintaining roster flexibility. Could I be wrong? Sure. Maybe ownership tells Shapiro and Atkins to just spend whatever it takes. Maybe they really do go after both guys and somehow make it work. But I'd bet everything I own that it doesn't happen. It's too risky, too expensive, and too limiting for how the Blue Jays operate. Passan threw it out there as a possibility. And technically, yeah, it's possible in the same way it's possible I could win the lottery tomorrow. But likely, no way. The bottom line is this. Signing both Tucker and Bo sounds amazing if you're playing MLB The Show or building a fantasy team. But in real life, with real budgets and real roster construction challenges, it's a pipe dream. It's the kind of thing that sounds great in a tweet but falls apart under any scrutiny. And I think most people, including Passan himself, probably know that. He's not crazy for suggesting it. He's just giving fans something to dream about. But dreams don't win championships. Smart roster construction does. And signing both of these guys to massive deals would be the opposite of smart. It would be organizational suicide dressed up as ambition.